Hello, I'm here live from South by Southwest with Matthew McConaughey, who really felt strongly about being on camera talking about The Electric State with me. So The Electric State, Netflix's most recent original movie that reportedly could have cost up to $320 million? And it kind of sucks, but is also going to be a massive success for the platform, I'm sure. I know that's not a surprise at this point, but I find it so incredibly wild that they started with something that has some of the most bleak and unsettling dystopian source material in the novel by Simon Stålenhag, and ended up with this high-budget slop where Woody Harrelson is voicing Mr. Peanut, essentially becoming this weak children's movie that's trying to evoke emotions from the classics and just failing at every turn. Sorry, Millie Bobby Brown, I guess you get one of those and you had Stranger Things. Pretty disappointing, especially as someone who really enjoys that original graphic novel, because what we just end up with is this pretty lame adventure movie with Millie Bobby Brown trying to find her lost brother in the wasteland of a post-robot war world in the year of 1994, and Chris Pratt shows up with an Anthony Mackie robot somewhere along the way to help out. But we will get into that, but first, it has been a minute, guys. I'm so sorry. I've been traveling a lot for work, and I actually had an entire video about the Oscars, like my reaction to the winners and stuff, that was being edited. But then everyone started being really weird about the Oscars almost the second I got on a plane to come to South by Southwest, and I just did not have the mental capacity to make the edits that would have been required to keep the video remotely relevant. And then it was just too late to do anything with it. So that video will probably end up on Patreon for patrons and up on YouTube for channel members. And one thing I have to say is that for the people who think that saying that that Mikey Madison winning the Oscar is like the end of the substance playing out in real time, that is not the clever dunk you think it is, and you're actually playing into the messaging of the substance by trying to pit a younger actress against an older actress, or a younger woman against an older woman, and that's not cool. But the only reason I was even able to watch the Oscars was thanks to today's sponsor, Surfshark. For the past 2 years, the Oscars have always hit when I was at South by Southwest, so we all just watched it together in an Airbnb, but this year, it's early, and I found myself without the option to watch it in Canada. But thanks to Surfshark VPN, that was no issue. All I had to do was connect to a US server location, log into Hulu, and boom, instantly on the homepage, we have the Oscars live stream ready to go. And it was beautiful. Instead of having to try to keep up through a series of other people's tweets, I get to be disappointed in real time. Surfshark is just my go-to for so many reasons. Whether it's connecting to one of their thousands of different server locations to access region-locked content, ensuring my services work no matter where I am in the world, or protecting myself on public Wi-Fi, Surfshark has me covered. They even let you generate alternate emails and US phone numbers so you don't have to give out your personal data where it's not necessary, to help cut down on spam and scams. So try out Surfshark for yourself. It's fast, secure, blocks unwanted ads, works across unlimited devices, and if you go to surfshark.com/Jedi, you can get an extra 4 months of Surfshark completely free. But okay, into The Electric State. Why the massive tonal and story shift from the graphic novel to the movie? What's going on with those Russos? So at a very bare level, there are some similarities in both. It's Michelle traveling the wasteland with a robot trying to track down her little brother, while other entities also seem to be trying to find him. But other than that, and some of the visual tech and imagery that's tossed in pretty lazily, like the desert of duck bots, it is just so very different. There was a war in the book, but it wasn't a robot war like in the movie. Just one fought with drones controlled through this neural link technology, which is what went on to essentially destroy humanity. Which, when you get to the Russos' motivation, they should have stuck to that a little bit more. But the change they made in the movie actually makes for some like weird morals, because by the end of the story, it's supposed to be like, hey kids, you should make sure to get outside and play, hang out with real people, other humans, make those connections. But also, robots are really cool, guys. Be nice to robots, because we gotta throw in those allegories against prejudice and racism, but again, doing such a poor job at it that it just feels cheap. I've definitely seen movies that have adapted a story less accurately to the source material. See my tarot video for that. But it's so easy to see why fans of the book and the work of Simon Stålenhag are just so very upset and disappointed by what this became. That book creates such an excellent backdrop for even a series, not even just a movie, an entire series of like this mystery and intrigue that you can build off of, that you can buff out the backstory, that you can build on the things that are happening, and they just don't do it. Basically, per the Russo's own words, they really just liked the imagery and themes. Well, some of the themes, they very specifically wanted to hone in on the risks of social media and tech consumption with the aim of reaching a younger audience, which is why they changed the tone. I don't think they needed to change the tone that excessively, but here we are. Because their attempt to make this more open to a wider and younger audience actually made it less accessible, in my opinion, and I think it actually cheapened the message that they seem to be trying for. Because I really just don't think they did a good job expressing that intended message. Even outside the tonal issues, my biggest problem with this movie is just how it's structurally laid out. It's a whole ass mess with so many plot conveniences to keep things moving that the story just suddenly has no weight. And on top of that, they didn't successfully make me care about a single character in this entire movie. And that's just the usual for the Russos at this point. Poorly structured adaptations. With this and a lot of their other things, it is the same writing and directing team that they had for things like Infinity War, but pretty much since then, the best thing they've managed to do is Cherry. You know, that war movie with Tom Holland I also talked about that wasn't terrible but wasn't great? Yeah, that's the best thing they've done since Endgame. Honestly, at this point, authors should be afraid if the Russos want to adapt their piece of work unless they just care about making a lot of money because holy shit, they're gonna do something very bad to it. Let's dive in on that plot so you can understand why I just feel like this came together so poorly. This thing drops you into the year of 1990 with a kid that we're told is a genius because he finished this super intense test in hours that took Einstein 3 whole days. And with that, they're really quickly trying to drop us into what this world is. We've got these budding tensions, a potential robot war building, getting so bad that they're canceling beloved cartoons with a robot named Cosmo. And this kid, Christopher, is specifically worried about being shipped off to college early because he thinks they might want to take his brain. We really need to understand the unique level of genius that's happening here. But that comment, in combination with his conversation that's a lot of rhyming about consciousness transcending physical boundaries, makes it pretty obvious what this story is going to end up doing in terms of humans and robots. But this pushes us into a montage of what's going to happen over the course of the next 4 years. We got robots that were used in automation, and then they become sentient enough to realize that they want to revolt because they want lives of their own. Their spokesman, again, a Woody Harrelson voiced Mr. Peanut. So after a lot of war, Mr. Peanut strikes a deal with Stanley Tucci, a tech billionaire genius named Ethan Skate, so that the two sides can live separately and harmoniously or something. And the whole thing is just so goofy in a way that doesn't feel good and intentionally goofy, to the point that I had to go check to see what the rating was for this movie, and somehow it's still PG-13 with how candy-coated kitty this is. It still is a PG-13 movie. You could rent this and The Conjuring at the same time. The whole thing really just has the vibe of a parody educational video that's inside a piece of better media. Imagine Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park, but significantly worse and way more kiddie. And that's the entire movie. Kind of feels like it's designed for 7-year-olds in a way that would be insulting to the intelligence of a lot of 7-year-olds. Like a cheap riff on Spielberg by way of Spy Kids, but again without the campy charm of Spy Kids. Oh, also in the montage we get a little clip of Chris Pratt as a soldier. So that's his origin, I guess, before he turns into this trash god. Now, one of the earliest pieces of striking imagery in the graphic novel is this sandy wasteland filled with skeletons, all with these animalistic looking helmets that we will find are called neurocasters, or from the Center Stimulus, this company called Center. And we get to the next page and it's just people standing lifeless attached to charging stations, alive but barely, very zombie-like. Again, these things are called neurocasters. They were originally designed for pilots to command drones in the war, but they ended up getting sold at a consumer level, and it created this kind of hive mind where everyone's experiencing the same things instantly, and it's incredibly addictive. And it really goes a lot deeper. I guess using them causes sterility, but in the movie, the neurocasters are made by this billionaire oligarch. Again, some of it was for drone piloting, but it's presented to consumers as a way to let half of your brain think you're on vacation while the other half goes to work in a robot body, kind of becoming a very lazy Severance that makes no sense because you wouldn't be able to split your consciousness like that, I don't think, and it feels incredibly lame and makes no sense. Especially when large sections of this movie is someone using it as the drone technology, obviously because the robot has more strength than them, but they're just they're fully focused in on it as themselves too. Anyway, they do try to create some of that same imagery from the comic of people letting themselves waste away while wearing this thing to avoid reality, but it definitely doesn't have the same haunting chill that that would have been a way more effective deterrent at people getting addicted to technology and social media. But we then jump to the year 1994 after the war, where Michelle has now become the aggressive rock grunge girl against the Neurocasters and is also a foster child. Apparently her whole family died in a car accident, and I feel just nothing learning that information. I honestly feel like I would have felt more learning that if they hadn't introduced me to the brother first, because that opening scene is so weird. Honestly, I might have just cut that entire intro because it didn't really make me care about the characters at all and just found a way to like convey that information as the story's going. I think that would have been way more engaging and interesting because the scene as it pops up as the first one feels so disjointed and weird, which the movie doesn't need any help with because it is very rapidly moving us through things. Like immediately that night, a robot pops up in her garbage that's designed after the show they watched as kids. And just like in Transformers, this robot can't talk. And even once she reconnects the thing in its brain, the only thing it can do is speak in catchphrases. And with that and a lot of hand gesturing, he's trying to say, hey, I'm your brother. Stellar. Obviously, she doesn't believe that this is her brother, but then almost immediately she does believe it's her brother. So that's that. She manages to make out that he didn't actually die in the car crash, but that he is not actually all right or safe right now, and that the doctor at the hospital did something with him, and now his body is stuck at Center, which again is the company that makes those Neurocasters and seems to actually have control over society, like an oligarchy type thing going on here. But yeah, oh my God, they stole his brain just like he thought they would. He was right. So to find this doctor, we just get into like a series of like dumb situations. Like they're like, okay, I know that my foster guy is ordering things from the exclusion zone. Let's follow the address back to the guy who sells them the stuff from the exclusion zone. And maybe that guy will be able to safely get us in there without getting caught. And we can just figure out a way to get where we need to go from there. Because again, they're trying to get to this big Center company. Oh, also while this is happening, they are being hunted down by a robot powered by Giancarlo Esposito, also known as the Butcher. Like the cameos in this thing are absurd. Like for like 2 seconds, we get Coleman Domingo in one of these robots. We got like Jason Alexander running around somewhere in here. But anyways, they hitch a ride with the smuggler, who is of course Chris Pratt, this disillusioned ex-military man who's now basically just junkyard Andy Dwyer. He's even got a trusty sassy sidekick robot named Herman, voiced by Anthony Mackie. Gang's all here. But before they can get properly acquainted, Marshall the Butcher comes down because he is part of the robot deactivation task force. He, busts his way into this hideout, wants to destroy the robots and arrest Michelle for stealing her foster father's car. We are like 10 minutes into this movie and there is so much going on, but simultaneously like there's nothing's going on. There's more going. I don't know what just happened upstairs, but there's more going on upstairs than in this movie. Thankfully, they do manage to narrowly escape multiple rows of danger here because apparently Keith's robot can Matryoshka doll itself into a larger robot, so they escape scavengers as well. And it just kind of feels like we're mindlessly moving from conflict to conflict, like a video game with NPCs, which is kind of like my least favorite structure of a movie, when it just feels like we're moving like, here's the dialogue scene, here's where we're fighting the faceless baddie, here's the dialogue scene, we're fighting the faceless baddie, I don't like it. But it's around here that the big bad Ethan Skate realizes that he's lost the brain of his prized pony. Like, physically, the brain is clearly still inside the child, but the consciousness is in the robot. You get it? And yeah, apparently Christopher was just so smart, they needed to connect him into their entire system to power it and make the Neurocaster network stronger somehow. In the graphic novel, not to spoil it if people are interested in, there is something specific about the brother that's special that would be the reason why they're trying to get him, even without going into full details in that story. There's a way that he is different from the rest of humanity. It actually feels very similar to The Last of Us in a lot of ways, with like Ellie being the one who's like immune to the bites. There's just like, there's an aspect to the story there that felt similar. Still very much its own thing, but I would check it out. It's very cool. And the stuff with Skate is kind of interesting because like it looks like he's specifically trying to recreate pieces of his childhood, but only with his mom being loving, which I guess she wasn't. It really just feels like that scene in Civil War where Tony's like recreating pieces of his memory before his parents got into the car crash, except there's no emotional resonance here because I don't give a shit. But this is what links him up with the Butcher. He wants his prized pony back. The Butcher wants a robot and to arrest a truant delinquent. They work together. He's gonna hunt him down. It's gonna be great. Not for the good guys though, but for them, it's a good team. So with a renewed enemy on their tail, the gang is heading to Tabletop Mountain because Apparently that's where the doctor might be. That's where Center is or something. But first they end up attacked by this robot civilization that has turned the mall into their empire, which again really just feels like an excuse to showcase and feature a bunch of famous people as voice actors for no reason whatsoever. But finally that brings them to the terrifying Mr. Peanut robot. Again, I keep saying this, voiced by Woody Harrelson, who can't even escape being bald as an animated nightmare. And he can't really help them because if Center finds out that they're harboring humans, it violates the treaty and they'll get blown up or something. They really just keep harping on all this stuff. They're really trying hard to create this entire political landscape. And I don't care. It doesn't work. But conveniently, I guess the doctor they're looking for had been staying at this exact location before they sent him off into the desert. But don't worry, the USPS robot conveniently has a letter from this doctor for Christopher. So barely an inconvenience to figure out where they need to go. It literally has an address on it. And through all this, they're trying to build up heart so I care about the character, showing us flashbacks to her remembering their last Christmas together when he didn't want to go back to college and she said that he could save the world so he had to. And then he fucking died. But I still don't care. Okay, it's a couple days later. I've made a little pit stop to my parents for a little bit, but that means you get to enjoy everyone's either favorite or least favorite wallpaper to end out this video. We'll also keep trying to get us in on those emotions so we care about anything that's happening here, setting us up with these flashbacks to the past, like Chris telling her that he knew he was only being valued for his brain and not what he could do with it, before they just have him pop up with this creepy little robot smile like a jump scare. Unironically, would make a great horror murder robot, and again, in the graphic novel, it really works. It just adds to that unsettling feeling, whereas this is going in a completely different tonal direction, so it's just ah! But after much internal debate, Mr. Peanut is actually ready to help them find this doctor. We get another run of NPC baddies with these scavenger bots that feel like Sid from Toy Story's monster creations. And they're just trying so hard to build the tension in this moment, but it's just so not believable. You got Michelle running to a door and realizing that it doesn't open. I don't know if Millie just got used to acting this way because it was required for 11 to act like she had these weird emotions, or if that's just what they wanted from her in this movie. But other than a couple of fun lines she gets.
I'm a very important man.
Should we just run at this point?
It's just been a little bit rough. I do not believe she's running up these stairs with urgency. But then suddenly, as they're being swarmed in on, Good Vibration starts blasting through the speakers.
I am not dying of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch!
And I can't tell if these things just hate music or if it's specifically Marky Mark that they have an issue with, but whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. They get trapdoored in, and there's the doctor. Barely an inconvenience. Man, I love Key getting work, but give my man something worth his time. So yeah, he reveals that they kidnapped Christopher while he was in a coma to use his brain to power the neurocasters and all of Center so these soldiers could be in combat and rotate in and out of the drones instead of actually needing to go into battle, which is what helped them win the war. So they've basically just been keeping this kid locked in his own brain on life support so they can just abuse it, which is very horrific. But then it got even worse because he started to wake up, which is when the good doc was like, oh my God, we gotta let him go, which the billionaire was absolutely never planning to allow happen because that would get in the way of his commercial and financial domination of the world. So before leaving, the doctor made a connection from Christopher's brain to the outside server so he'd be able to escape into a robot, then put in the location where the robots were planning that settlement so he'd be able to find a family.
He already had a family!
And just before they can get over this tension and head off to find Christopher, the butcher shows up with Skate and his men to start another brawl.
What in the hell does the United States Postal Service need that for?
Your Doberman.
Okay, that one actually got me. It was a good bit. I'll admit when a bit gets me. Now with the butcher, he's all about rules. He's a real stickler, real defender of humanity, so they're not supposed to kill other humans in their line of work. So when Skate kills the doctor without even flinching, he starts to question what they've really been working towards.
You're a murderer.
Debatable.
Especially once he realizes he's been used to capture the brain of this boy that they're gonna have trapped for eternity. But even through the devastation, the gang heads off to Seattle to save Christopher, which will actually have a 2 birds, 1 stone effect. If they disconnect Christopher, it'll actually destroy all of Center's network. It'll completely collapse. And after all the cameos I've already mentioned, did I mention that Brian Cox is the baseball guy? We get Patty Harrison popping up for 1 single scene, 1 single second. I hope you got some kind of bag, but what the hell? There's just entirely too many people in this this movie used for absolutely no reason. Like, I don't even think I've mentioned Holly Hunter or Raul Coley. Whatever, we're at the big battle. Michelle sneaks in to find her brother. The butcher actually lets Mr. Peanut know where Skate's controlling his big robot from, because he's now realized that Skate's actions are less human than the robots. And just as he leaves his neurocaster, Michelle enters hers to visit Christopher's mind, which he's maintained as that last Christmas they spent together before dying. And he reveals that it's pretty unlikely that his body will be able to survive if he gets disconnected from center, so to take them down, he has to die. Which I thought was pretty dark for how this movie's been playing out, but I also don't care because they have just really not successfully made me care about this character. Not to say it wasn't sad, there just definitely isn't as much emotional resonance there as I think they were anticipating. Like, honestly, it only really gets sad when he points out that he spent 3 years trying to actually feel something by recreating that last Christmas, and knows that that's what his eternity is going to be looking like if they don't stop it now. So yes, Michelle makes the decision to end his life, which is honestly better than what he's experiencing now. And just like in Phantom Menace, all the center drones power down. But oh no, Pratt's robot pal is dead. Except no, inside that mid-sized bot is a tinier bot.
Hey, Beefcake, you miss me?
Sorry, buddy, you'll never be Baby Groot. Which is probably good that he's not actually a baby when we get to reveals like this.
I love you. I mean, really, maybe more than a friend.
So that's the end of that. A video of what they were doing to Chris leaks, so Skate's actually being held accountable for his actions. But then that just leads into Michelle having a very lame Katniss Everdeen moment to explain this new world about how people shouldn't be afraid that they can't use the neurocasters anymore, that they were just a distraction from dealing with the real world, just like our cell phones. Which, yeah, those are a problem, but this movie really isn't doing a good job expressing that. But then it's like they remembered that they had to tie in robots to this like new humanity aspects and being like, you know, we may be flesh, but we're also electricity. Our particles mingle every time we interact and hug and laugh. And you know what else is electricity? Robots.
Pretty good for a meat puppet.
And because everything just has to leave room for a sequel, we're left with Robot Chris waking up in the junkyard to a piano cover of Wonderwall. Wow, guys, maybe the next one will cost $500 million. I'd like to hope it's actually so much cheaper if they can just reuse some of those assets. But honestly, when you have this many big name actors attached to something, that's gotta be like a quarter of the budget right there alone. But yeah, that's the movie. There's nothing like overtly egregious about it other than it being a horrific adaptation. That's pretty egregious, but if you just leave that aside and take the movie as it is nowhere near the worst thing I've seen, but it also isn't doing anything particularly well either. You're getting some of the worst performances out of really good actors or really fun actors. The story is tired and washed out. The structure is atrocious. They aren't doing a good job making me care about anyone. But my biggest issue is I feel like it completely fails at expressing that core concern about this obsession with technology and phones and social media as a means of escape. Specifically, we're trying to address that with children or young teens, or maybe even the parents watching this and being like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't let my kid watch Mr. Beast at the restaurant all the time. Like, they do wrap that theme up with a nice little bow at the end when they have her like explicitly saying that out loud, but the core of this movie doesn't have that much to do with it. Nothing in the conflicts or the climax have anything specifically to do with people being addicted to things in this way. It's really more about like an oligarch abusing humanity and an actual person to make an empire and make more money, which fine themes too, but not what they were going for. Like, this also might have been cliche, but if something had happened to get like Michelle in a neurocaster and like them being like, you can literally have your entire family back again. You and Chris together can live in this world of your imagination, your dream, your own personal little matrix, and then have her have to emotionally break out of that. Even that would have been better. Even that would have somewhat started scratching at the issues they claim to want to address, but no. Even Wally did a better job addressing these issues as a side theme that it would have had no way of fully anticipating back in 2008 over this movie that's actively trying to be a cautionary tale for young viewers. So that means this movie both fails as an adaptation of the source material and in delivering the message it felt so important to kids that they completely changed the tone and direction. But then they just use that to tell this incredibly bland story that doesn't even do a good job driving home the intended message. It's not hard to watch. Your kids may end up enjoying it. It just screams, ironically, something to have on while you're doing things on your phone. Like, I can absolutely see kids simultaneously having this on while watching Coleman on their iPads. And none of that is really surprising and not necessarily the worst thing in the world until you start considering how big that budget actually was. And disappointing as hell to somewhat upsetting when it's the adaptation that we're getting for something that felt so unique. The electric state is something that starts shifting the perception of your mind. The way it puts these monstrous robotic beasts in the distance and behind houses of things and places that look so familiar to you, but in a way you've never seen before. It feels like it's pulling out this nightmare of a distorted history from your brain, only to have you look around and realize, like, holy shit, maybe we're actually barreling towards something worse. And it's told in such a unique way. Like, the stuff with Michelle kind of comes across like this travel log, and then you have these other paragraphs that start feeling almost like a history lesson before you realize it's like a correspondence with someone getting orders. Before those two pieces actually meet, and they don't even meet in the dialogue specifically, it takes place in the pictures. I've never really experienced something where things are so simultaneously, like the words are their own things and the pictures are another part of the story. They're not 100% supplementing each other. They are each their own unique piece. So that's just really why it's been so upsetting to see this turned into something that feels so incredibly style over substance. And we're talking like zero substance, and even there's probably some issues with that style too. It almost feels like the movie is working hard to be as dumb as it is. So yeah, that's why I think this movie is basically the tire fire skate says the world is in the movie. Even if it's just as a fun thing to put on for your kids, I think your kids deserve better. Your kids can have better. There is better out there for your children. Like The Good Robot came out last year. But yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for this video. Let me know what you guys are thinking down below. If you watched it with kids and they enjoyed it, that's great. This isn't me trying to be like, you're wrong for liking this. I just have issues with it, especially when you even take the words of the creators and what their intention was. I think they failed at that intention and they spent so much money doing it. So that's gonna do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. Subscribe if you're new. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'll be mostly okay again, and we'll catch you all later.